I'll keep the first bit brief because we got pizzas coming at 7 and nobody likes cold pizza, do they? So just, do you want to get kind of configured and set up and everything? And right, so what I need to do is, I wonder if I can just drag this across. I'm afraid I had to get rid of my Bluetooth clicker because my usual dongle, which has got the Bluetooth widget, was playing up, so I had to replace it with this one. Very non-technical, but do you mind doing that? Is that okay? Great. So real quick, open forum, Q&A. What's that?
Do you have Wi-Fi?
Yes. Yep, cool.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, circulate it. Welcome, have a seat. So this is sort of the open forum bit where I kind of welcome you guys to stand up and share anything that's kind of related to Ethereum, I guess, seeing this is the Ethereum meetup. But cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain. The only thing that you probably saw, I made a few changes to the community whereby I'm trying to steer us away from the sort of fintech mania around ICOs and dodgy tokens and so on and so forth, because increasingly I've seen individuals starting new communities and meetups with the clear intention they're trying to sort of punt some dodgy scheme, which is just frustrating for all of us, because ICOs, are fundamentally changing the way innovation is going to be funded, and I'm in favor, and there are plenty of really awesome ICOs out there, and the teams behind them are genuinely raising money to build something truly innovative, and that should be encouraged. But with every kind of bubble and the mania that goes with it, you get chances and dodginess in the system. It just kind of corrupts it and just gives the whole thing a bad name. So what I'm trying to do is steer very much away from crypto speculation and really focus on the underlying technology that makes cryptocurrencies possible, the blockchain, because that's going to be used as the fabric for an entirely new third web, a decentralized, far more efficient web than the one that we have before. So, our first speaker, how many times, is this the second or third? Well, there's the Internet of Things meetup before, but our sister community. But you were talking about blockchain relating to medical devices at that point, weren't you? And now we sort of moved on a little bit, okay, fantastic, to focusing more on the Ethereum platform, which if you're going to pick a platform to go for, I think Ethereum is probably the VHS versus the Betamax. There are other platforms, of which there are many, that have more bells and whistles than Ethereum. But I think Ethereum now just has an unassailable lead. They just have too much momentum behind them, and that's kind of why I put all my eggs in the Ethereum basket. And I think we're all agreed on that. So before James begins, any sort of questions, anything you want to share before we kick off? Yes, no, yeah?
Just that thing about Ethereum.
Yes.
I was in China recently speaking with techies, and it was showing me three major flaws in
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they're working on it.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
hoping that James is going to...
Oh, there are many. This is a point I'm making.
Yes.
Betamax was a far superior standard, but for all sorts of reasons I won't go into, VHS was adopted, an inferior technology, and became the standard. So I think it's naive to think that something that is superior technologically is going to be the winner. And I don't think Ethereum is the best solution compared to, let me think, God, there are so many out there. And we've got, EOS hasn't really been built yet. IOTA is a different, beast because it's really optimized for IoT. Guys, give me some Ethereum alternatives, because my brain, Waves. I'm just thinking the Chinese equivalent.
Right? But it doesn't have
Yes.
bells and whistles. It's actually less. It's more stable.
Yeah, Tezos is another one. Then there's another one. It's doing my head in. Sorry. Yeah. This is the one it's just escaped my mind. It is technologically more advanced, I would say.
The new one that's just about to come out.
Oh, it used to be called Ant. Thank you, Neo. Yes, you could argue that Neo. Thank you so much. Is superior, but I just, it looks like for the moment, at least, the Ethereum seems to, and I'm confident they're going to fix a lot of these bugs and technological problems. Come on in.
It's more accessible to developers looking to build on it, and that
yes,
it's not necessarily that it's.
That's true too.
I think because there are more stable alternatives.
Exactly.
It's easier to get going.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Anywho, so let's just have a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Simon, for the invite back. We've only got 10 minutes to pizza, so we might do it in 2 halves. So,
It's fine. I guess the pizza will probably arrive late.
So, the agenda for tonight, we should always ask why we need to wrestle this. And I'm going to talk about two sorts of computations. One are like commodity ones, and then there's the one with the true bits. There's a whole notion of zero knowledge proofs, and I think you will have speakers to devote a whole evening to that. But ultimately, that's going to be one of the solutions too. So, here we have computers, and the reason I put this slide up is governance and computers at the heart of democracy and our honest grid. So here's an election, I think it's commentary somewhere. And society has chosen, and for those who don't know, the name computer was in existence before the silicon chip computer, and they were humans, mainly women, right? So what society has done is that these people with the bands are qualified, counters, computers, whereas we probably wouldn't want people who are rosettes because they've got self-interest maybe not to count the bundles into 10. So their job is to put in 10, 10, 10, and red, blue, green. And of course they're using some sophisticated technology to help with errors because they don't want to get doubles, because how do you know there's 8, 9, 11, half? So society's been grappling with this problem. How do we keep the computation honest? Because it's at the heart of our governance. And so we obviously want to not do away with humans, but could we have a cryptographic, have the laws of maths and physics behind us, but have the certainty everything's honest? And I think we can. We're just not there yet. I had some building blocks, but if anybody's ever heard me speak before, this is my mantra. So I usually build up the case, I think, in my OE talk about how you might use Ethereum to do network data science. So I'm very interested in the next talk. And I said, oh yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that because that involves moving the data. And so my whole mantra is you never move the data. My whole worldview is you never move the data. You move the computations. But that's got a challenge which we haven't quite solved, but I think it's possible. So I have to make a bit more case of why this radical, intolerant maximalist view on computation. So I used the case of Google. So Google, being one of the world's leading data companies, knows through its internal data currency that it will go bankrupt in the medium term because of the volume of data coming onto the web and now their computation complexity is going. And these things are tweaving each other, so there'll come a point in the not too distant future where they'll be bankrupt. So during this time, I met a young PhD graduate who's now part of Google's Seattle team, and he issued a paper last November on what we call federated machine learning. So one of the ways to get these economics back into control is to do all the computations on our Android phones, and then put the training models to Google Central, and then add up the training models. But of course, this is the fundamental problem until November last year. We could never add up those little models to get a big model, which was as good as the centralized model. But they found techniques to do that and has benchmarked it, and so they're now building a whole team out in Seattle to do that. So you can guarantee that all the other big data companies will be doing the same. So of course, we're Satoshi Nakamoto peer-to-peer anarchist, so we don't want this centralized feature. And so what I've been working on, a team is working on what we call the whole notion of decentralized machine learning. So when we come to this centralized federated, we don't do that. We create a new breed to be built, super smart contract that's owned by the community that goes around and aggregates all these training models to create the whole model, and anyone in the network can then tap into it when they're ready and apply that to their problem in the world. So that's why I'm interested, and I think these techniques we're going to talk about will get us part way. But ultimately, we have to keep these computations honest. So we're not moving the data, it's like all rests on their shoulders. And of course, the simple economics, even the most complicated machine learning algorithm, is far less than one YouTube video. So it seems more efficient to put these computations around on the network. Right. So Golem. I think in my original email to Simon, I said this would be an introduction. I don't use Golem practically at all. I'm going to go into true bits, and the reason I'm a bit more knowledgeable there, we had Christian, who's the co-founder of TrueBit, speak at our Blockchain for Science meetup in Berlin. So he took 45 minutes to build up a sort of layman's introduction to what they're doing, and so I'm going to try to do that in a few minutes. But the thing about Golem, it keeps on evolving. I was on the website just this week. So it wants to be a generalized compute platform to the world, like most in this space, but we originally had a very tight use case. I think it's still the one they've got working, saying it's videoing rendering videos. So if you create the video from tonight, Simon, needs, well, 2 hours, it will be 3 hours. It's a big file, and he wants to do it quicker, so he wants to give it to like 1,000 nodes. You can do that without problem, because you make into like 100 bits and put them all out. You can do them all in parallel. It's such as the algorithm that you can stitch it back, even if they come in different orders. Whereas the algorithms that we're more interested in, machine learning, are completely like evolving on the fly, so you can't do that aggregation. So this is what Golem is sort of doing today, is saying, give me a standard computation that can be done in parallel, and you don't mind the order that it goes in. And so they've got a whole raft of 3D visualization architecture, video stuff. So that's possible, and they provided the mechanics to do that, but there's still this issue of control. So how do we trust?
I forgot to give you the microphone. How are we doing for sound? Are we cool?
We're running from the camera, but it'd be better if you...
Didn't I say I'd forget to do that? I did say that. Hopeless. Sorry. Sorry. Why do you want that?
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm watching live.
So the key with all this crypto stuff, it's not just a utility platform, it's a utility platform plus some game theory or some crypto token. But from this point of view, Simon's putting the bounty up, and he's put the computation up. So he could waste his money doing that, but there's a disincentive for him not to do it. But he could still spam the network, and then there could be a Trojan horse in his file out there. And I'm not actually sure how Golem treats that, but it'd be a kind of perverse situation that, but if someone just wanted to create havoc in the network, you could spam your video raw file with nastiness. The peers would download it, hit the crunch point. So I'm not actually sure how the Golem network addresses that, where it's the core problem that TrueBits, and probably that's the answer. So TrueBit and Golem are seen as Siamese twins. So once you've got trust in the computation, then you can distribute it. So I think on its own, TrueBit's taking that risk. But the other example I give, which is not a crypto one, is SETI at home. You just trust the brand of Berkeley University, right? So this sort of commodity compute, there's nothing special about the algorithm. It just needs to be brute forced. This seems to be an easy way to get started, and you don't have to worry about the actual the data or the code. So I don't know if anybody else has got this. You said you've done some work with Golem or speculation. And that's all I really wanted to do, was just get this idea of when it's commodity, there's a commodity thing, it'll be cheaper, but the network has to put trust on the computation average. So on your UI, you can have your real-time heart, your average for the day, and then the community average. So it's a very basic computation, but the challenge is kind of simple. How do I know that the average is taking place as an average? And by that, the opening question is, what do we mean by average? Anybody statistician? Okay, so there's like mean, modian, median, right? And I meant a mean, right? So there's a frequency accumulated divided by that frequency. So this is a use case I've been talking to TrueBit about. And so how does the story go? Okay, so I'm the scientist putting forward this computation called average. I've open sourced the code onto GitHub. And then I say to TrueBit, here's like 10 Ether coin bounty that says this is an honest and truthful computation. But I want to get network validation that that is true, because of course I would say that, right? So I distribute it to the 9 other people on the network. They download the code onto their machine. We're all running on the TrueBit platform at this point, and we all run the computation. But before we run the computation, each of these 9 people have to put something at stake too. I don't know, let's say 1 Ether coin just for simplicity. The other thing they do is they put forward the 10 numbers that they will be adding up, and they also put the answer. So we've now got 10 people, including myself, 10 numbers, and we've all put the answer in of what that sum should be, but we're all running the same code. That's all been agreed. Timeout does. TrueBit then says, okay, we will then start your computation, and at some point in random, TrueBit stops. And what TrueBit does is it looks into the memory profile of these 10 computers, makes a recording, and it checks they're all the same. And unlike the Ethereum blockchain where there's a 51% consensus, it's a 99.9998 consensus, i.e. they all have to agree. So what it means if they disagree, the one that the TrueBit community had agreed upon. So let's just tell you the story a little bit more and what I think is the right terminology that TrueBit would use. So you're the task giver who puts forward the computation, and then you have these sorters or verifiers, and so the TrueBit giver is it's an Ethereum smart contract, right? So news to Ethereum, the fundamental problem that Ethereum solves is keeps all these smart contracts honest. And the reason we're talking about this problem in the first place is we can't run any complicated computation in the network because it would bankrupt us on the cost of keeping it honest, or be very slow. So we're trying to do a computation off the chain. And so TrueBits is fundamentally a smart contract. And so when we have these other 9 people come along, guess what? They issue into Ethereum smart contracts. And that's where they put the stake in. And then when they actually run the computation and when it's stopped at random, they're actually putting the hashes of their memory profile into smart contracts. So again, and then the TrueBit platform is going into those smart contracts and then doing all the maths to make sure that they're all the same. And then obviously if the bounties are true or otherwise, then they would issue the rewards from the task giver to the network, and vice versa. If they were wrong, they would lose it and compensate the others for wasting their time. So what else was I going to say about TrueBit? Yes, so there's a lot of smart contracts going upon. So the fundamental problem was Ethereum, we can't do our complicated computation in a smart contract, and we're going to use multiple smart contracts. And if I remember right from Christian, currently in their use case, it takes 24 confirmations too. So it's not very timely either. But at least in principle, at the end of that maybe few hour periods, we've got a computation that's trustworthy, and tying it back to our golem, now that computation could go across a much wider network because we've got certainty that the computation is the one that Simon ultimately wants to crunch. So I'm not sure how that came across, but
I mean, but what you're essentially describing is sharding, is off-state transactions that take place off blockchain, which is kind of the Casper initiative for the Ethereum Byzantine, is it? So it's kind of a quick fix for that.
So I think Christian started his talk by saying these zero-knowledge proofs, when they're efficient and we understand them, are the solution. But we're like 3-5 years from mainstream, so it's a bit like the Ethereum concept in itself. Maybe Tezos would be right in 5 years, but we have this 10-year gap where we need to make progress. So, so they know this is, because then you have to pay for the gas and all those computations too. So it's kind of still a very complicated world. But I think it does liberate, these science computations. So it's not going to just be an average. It's going to be a machine learning algorithm. And of course, that's going to have many parts to it. So you could actually compartmentalize those and get verification. And so I think the last bit I wanted to go on to, where your pizza gets cold.
James, just on that last slide. So what's the core difference between the Ethereum consensus being 51% and the true bit golem being 99%?
So when a block is created, it's once you got 51%, the next block's formed. So that's, you don't need all the miners to agree that you were the winner of the block. So that's called the 51% rule. And
Sure, so this is getting thrown on top
yeah.
to make sure that...
So when TrueBit was doing it, say it had 1,000 nodes in the network, it could say when 51% of them agree that the memory print of the average computation is, we could allow it to go forth. And they've chosen the complete opposite paradigm, made it all in little uncertain.
Proof of stake, right? How are you selecting? Proof of stake. How are you selecting those 10? Because if you've got proof of stake, you put 51% of the stake, or more, a large chunk of it, you end up with a percentage going, okay, I have contributed on 10, I can print what I want.
Cool. There's a section in the white paper of TrueBit. 3 big problems we've got to solve. And I think the second one is the one you just described, because, they would, I'll come back to that. The first one I recall is saying, well, when there's like the average, and we know it's like a no-win, like we're always going to win sort of thing, we'll just come into the world like miners and do the safe thing. And when there's a more exotic one, and so you won't get the same diversity and stuff. So there's a whole thing in the paper about, because it's smart contracts, and there's a whole issue in Ethereum about the miners have been front running the smart contracts, especially around ICOs. So the miners, which TrueBit's depended upon because their platform could front run. And so they've got all these technical things which I couldn't articulate right now to you, but the white paper certainly addresses them and proposes mathematical solutions, and we'll find out when they built it whether they actually, where they work or
I
not.
also understand why bad actors should lose their stake, but you articulate there are situations where there's a miscalculation due to dodgy hardware. That's a bit harsh to actually for someone. Some of these stakes are pretty substantial. How do you know whether it's intentional or just some kind of error?
So they're actually a third actor. And the third actor is called the challenger. So if you fundamentally believe something's gone wrong, you can up the ante. And then I think you put a stake at stake.
Like poker.
Yeah.
And you just ramp up.
Yeah, I think it's the third of these problems. So it's, again, like everything in this space, there's no certainty, there's no definitive, there's just embryonic use cases being deployed as they build the core idea out. They have a very active forum. I'm not sure if it's public or not, but you get stuck in there, you make your case, and you get educated. Yeah. So it's not really cheap either. That's my sort of tailback. Are we happy to pizza? Because
Well, that's 20 minutes.
yeah.
But we can do the audience kind of panel Q&A at the end.
Yeah.
To continue the discussion. But I
Yeah.
think we'll leave it there for the moment. Yeah, but don't forget, this is flipping, this is like ZX Spectrum territory if you're kind of right at the genesis of the micro PC industry, or Mosaic, web browser with no center command, or we're at Netscape, kind of 1.0. Don't be too harsh about these technologies. They haven't figured everything out. It's right at the dawn, and Ethereum, it's got loads of issues with it. But that's why this room doesn't contain 500 people. It contains how many people are in this room. It's because we're the innovators, we're the ones that actually have an awareness that this incredible technology even exists. So pat yourself on the back for just, showing up, for goodness sake. With the dawn of something very exciting, Very early days. Right, so let's go next door, grab some pizza. Don't know if there are beers there. Maybe there will. Will be, I hope so. Fingers crossed. And then we'll come back for Matthew's talk. Right? Yeah, all set? Yeah, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. That's your microphone, your control mic. Would you prefer to use your laptop? Okay, let's have a look. I don't want to touch anything. Cool.
there is this work? No. No, it's fine. I can.
Bluetooth widget on
Yeah.
the dongle. To click it doesn't work very well. And as I've tried to replace it with this dongle, there's no other way of doing it, so you're going to have to go old school, I'm afraid.
Cool.
That's okay.
No worries. Oh, it is PowerPoint. Is that going to work okay?
Have you got any dodgy fonts? That may be a problem. We've got a bunch of academics who not care about points. Fluffy nonsense. Drag it over. There you go.
Cool. Oh, almost.
Yeah. So, Matthew,
Cool.
literally just
Yeah.
those two. That's all you need.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Right. Matthew, are you at data lab?
Yes.
I know you're a data science geek, but what I would love you to do is do an introduction so that we sort of know your background and that sort of stuff. So, round of applause. Thank you, Matthew. All the way from Glasgow.
Thank you, Simon.
So I'm a data scientist at the Data Lab, and I've been doing data science, or what is now called data science, for probably about 10 years. Yes.
So does it mean you're an academic or in the private sector?
So I used to be an academic. I now work for the Data Lab, which is a public-funded innovation centre. This is where it gets a bit complicated. So we are under Edinburgh University, so we're part of Edinburgh University, but we're actually cross-university because we have offices in all universities because we're an innovation centre. Not for profit at all. Not for profit at all. We have strict requirements not to compete with commercial entities. Cool. Okay. So, being a data scientist at the Data Lab, I'm interested in the future of data science, how data science will evolve, and what role it will play in the future. So I called this Data Science in Web 3.0. It's probably a bit ambitious. It's not going to live up to that, but I'm going to talk about some things that are relevant to data scientists and hopefully find some overlap with the Ethereum and distributed ledger community. So who am I? So majority of my background is in data science, artificial intelligence. I've been studying and applying machine learning and computational statistics and doing data science when it started to be called that, and done consultancy work for various organizations. And I'm really interested in two main things. So data-driven design, so that might be the design of websites or apps or products or business processes, but how data can be used to drive those design decisions. And real AI, just AI that's out there in the world having an impact. Also done some stuff in Internet of Things, so worked in an IoT startup, worked with people who are logging lots of mobile data and Wi-Fi data, and Bluetooth. I've done a quite large-scale Bluetooth deployment and have been involved in the development of the location-based services that utilize those technologies. And then the intersection of those two is really just analyzing the data that comes out of this. So analyzing mobile use, application use, analyzing health data to understand physical activity, analyzing Wi-Fi, GPS and Bluetooth data to build positioning systems, and understanding how people interact with those technologies, and obviously the ethics involved. Now, the area I don't know much about is distributed ledger technology, Ethereum, these types of things. So you'll need to forgive me if I make any silly newbie mistakes, and I hope that through this talk I'm going to talk about some things and talk about a open source project that is filling in these gaps a bit. And I haven't seen, maybe there's activity focusing on the open source project and things like were discussed in the previous talk that are going on in Scotland that I don't know about, and we can find a way to connect up the data science community a bit more with Ethereum and distributed ledger community. So, why, something on there. So, why would data scientists care about these types of things? A lot of these come from me personally, so I can tell you what I care about. So I care about doing safe and secure data science. So I've noticed more and more with GDPR coming in, and stricter and stricter data sharing requirements that can delay data science projects and even terminate them completely. And then if you go through those hurdles and you do get some personal data, there's always a slight concern that you might do something wrong with it, you might accidentally publish something you shouldn't, these types of things. Even when people say they've anonymized it, they've taken out the name, and there's some really obvious stuff like location data and age and these types of things. So, as a data scientist, we want to be able to do data science in a safe and secure way, safe for the data creators, the subjects, and also for us, the data processors. Also care about, so I call it democratic data science. There's probably a better name, but this is just talking about giving people back control of their data. I personally care about this because I don't like the fact that there's a few large tech entities that seem to have access to all this really good personal data, and it'd be good that if people took back some of the control of their data, then other people would get more opportunities to work with it and utilize it for innovative products and services and useful things. But there's an issue there, because if people do take back control of their data, we could contact someone like Facebook and say we want all of our data, then it would probably inhibit the development of the existing services that we rely on and we take for granted. And if we are giving people back control of their data, then majority of people probably won't want to invest the time in saying who can use their data and what actually happens to it. So there might need to be some layer of data brokering in there. And then the third part is, so thinking about the next wave of data science. So we're at the peak of the Gartner hype cycle with artificial intelligence. There's a chance it might dip down a bit. There's a lot of people that say it won't, but it has dipped down in the past. Some of the hype will go. So starting thinking about what's kind of the next wave of data science and artificial intelligence, and it's going to be around decentralized intelligence and distributed intelligence, these types of things. Things like continual learning, so not the traditional train your model offline and then deploy it and then sometime later refresh it, but having decentralized intelligence out there, updating its beliefs and making predictions in real time, and more and more specialized hardware, because we are reaching the limits of Moore's law, and there's hardware out on the edge that needs to be used, and obviously doing it and making sure everything's secure. So I kind of just said a lot of stuff about motivation for being why data scientists would be interested in these types of things. I'm going to try and just focus on one particular thing that I hope is relevant to you guys, and there's some kind of overlap. So just thinking about, first of all, data decentralization. So what do I mean by this? Well, just thinking of big data controllers who have lots of data, and they're storing many, many people's data and somehow distributing the control back to the individuals. So going from something like that to something like this. Now, why would a data scientist care about that? What are the benefits? Well, in the traditional setup, you've got lots of individuals generating data, and it's being collected by data controllers, etc. And then they might want to transfer that data to a data processor, for example, a data scientist. And there's lots of issues with the individuals giving their data to the data controller, and then the hurdles of getting the data from the data controller to the data processor. So it'd be good if there was some type of platform, marketplace, exchange, etc., where the data processors can interact more seamlessly and less interruptions, and actually help individuals get value from their data without having to go via these large entities. Now, this type of exchange will probably involve existing entities because they have a lot of domain knowledge and things like that. So what would something like this look like? So I'm going to talk here about an open source project that I've been tracking for a while. All the contributors, there's a map of them, and there's only one other guy apparently up in Scotland. So if any of you are actually involved in it or following it, it'd be good to hear your opinions in chat at some point. And he's up in Aberdeen, and I chatted to him last week. So what is OpenMind? So it's an ecosystem of tools, of libraries for doing decentralized AI. But I'm going to talk here just about one component of it called Sonar, which is an Ethereum smart contract. So hopefully, there's loads of stuff in OpenMind that's being developed. It's all quite early stages, but hopefully the Ethereum smart contract called Sonar is something that would be relevant to the audience here. Okay, yeah, this is where you can correct me if I do anything silly. So let's just assume we've got someone. This person is not a data scientist. They set up a local node, connect to some Ethereum network. Let's just say it's the Rinkeby test network, because that is currently what if you follow the guidelines, you will deploy Sonar on. They get themselves some Ether, doing something maybe from some publicly available faucet, and they deploy this Sonar smart contract. So the Sonar smart contract is on the network, but what does that actually mean? Okay, so smart contracts on the network. Now, what are the main components of the smart contract? Well, because it's an exchange, so you've got data scientists trying to extract the value from people's data, you're not going to store any of the models or data actually on the network, because that is silly. So all the smart contract does is store addresses to models which are stored on IPFS, and it stores addresses to the data subjects who actually have ownership of the data, and these are called minds in OpenMind. And then what happens? Well, data scientists will submit a model, and the model will be stored on IPFS. I feel like I'm saying it wrong every time I say it. And the address to that model will be stored on the smart contract, and like before in the previous talk, they will submit a bounty, and the bounty is what they're prepared to pay for that model to be trained. Then what actually happens? Well, one of these guys who has personal data will get the address of the model, and the model will be sent to the data, as said before. And the gradient, so the gradient of, if you have a set of data, I should probably explain it in a bit more detail. If you have a model and you have a data example, then you can compute a gradient which helps you move in a positive direction for the model parameters regarding that data. So you get some change in model parameters which is sent back, and then that is evaluated to see whether that improves the model or not on some validation set. There's some open questions there about what is the validation set. And if that person's data helps improve the model, then that person gets the incentive, which in this situation would just be some Ether, and the data scientists, they get their new and improved model. So, well, this didn't really carry over properly. But so why is that relevant? Well, I showed the really simple example before of having some kind of exchange, etc. And really, it's a way for data scientists to extract the value that is in personal data, but to do it in a secure way. And I won't go into the details of what is actually going on in terms of homomorphic encryption, etc. But it's at the moment meant to be secure, well, as secure as Ethereum might be. And so what is actually happening in this transaction? So breaking it down into just the simplest form, you've got a data scientist, he's got a model, he wants to train a model that predicts diabetes well. He'll deploy the model, etc., but essentially there's just some incentive for some individual to contribute their data. And how do they contribute their data? They contribute it via a gradient. And that gradient is essentially the update for the parameters of this model that hopefully improve it. And this is one of the things that makes OpenMind different if you think of OpenMind as a marketplace or an exchange, because you get marketplaces that are selling data. People can come on and pay some of whatever currency and get access to data sets. And you've got exchanges that are trading models. So if you've got the data, you can go on and you can pay in whatever currency and get the models. So it's like a lump sum transaction. But OpenMind is actually monetizing the exchange of gradients. And when you're training a model, you've got lots and lots and lots of gradient steps. So it's really fine-grained economy of gradients. I think that's what makes OpenMind quite interesting. So I know at the beginning and in the splurb I said something about talking about information sharing between intelligent agents. I don't really have much on that apart from this slide, where you could essentially replace a lot of those people. So you could have some sensors with some localized intelligence storing the data, some kind of data scientists using automated machine learning, etc., and maybe even some automated process deploying smart contracts and essentially setting up the exchanges for these data processors and those data generators to interact. But that's kind of just a maybe slightly crazy idea. And that's kind of it. So I just wanted to say, so I'm personally interested in what is going on with OpenMind, and I think it'd be good to maybe get some more conversation up here. I'm personally interested in it from my data lab perspective, so how the technology might help Scottish companies and organisations and Scottish-based data scientists. So I've called something ScotMind. It's not really anything at the moment apart from a placeholder on Meetup and a GitHub repository that's empty, but it's something I hope to build on in the future. And that's me. Thank you.
So you've got DeepMind, Google DeepMind. It's pretty much doing the same thing in the opposite, highly centralized, controlled, corporate way, right? Taking all that NHS data, and then you've got OpenMind, and this is so exciting, right? This is the approach we've been waiting for, and I'll bring you into the conversation in just one moment.
I was only going to say the main guy who is running the OpenMind open source project is actually at DeepMind.
Oh, timing Quidditch, sure. No, I totally get why the NHS handed over millions of, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, I don't know, a lot of patient data. And the DeepMind solution is so enticing in that I think by using machines and image learning to do work that is currently tying up a lot of staff at NHS, it will release is it 1 million hours worth of extra manpower that can be actually devoted to patient care? So it seems like a very good idea, but at what cost? All that data, the patient data is being stored where, being used how? And if you strip all that make it trustless. You don't have to have that concern, that worry, and give all that power to one entity. I'm sure Google are incapable of committing any acts of evil because it's their mission statement. But theoretically, it just seems better to take a blockchain approach. This is absolutely amazing. What do you think as a professional, a medical professional, a qualified GP and technologist and entrepreneur? Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, well, one of the comments I wanted to make, I actually just started working at another innovation centre, the Digital Health Institute.
So this is Dr. Michael Barron?
Thank you, Simon. Yeah. And one of the main projects I'm actually being pulled into is we're trying to set up a demonstration environment inside the University of Strathclyde to tie in with a key tenet of the Scottish Government policy, which is patients, the citizens, should own their data. We should have a personal health record, and they should then be consenting to say, this organisation has allowed that, but this person in that organisation isn't allowed to see this bit of my data. My physiotherapist isn't allowed to see my Viagra, for example. And we're still working out what that architecture is going to look like, how that's all going to be playing out. Blockchain hasn't been mentioned yet, but certainly that's one of the things that I personally am going to be exploring and working out how we can do it. So if anyone has any thoughts or interest in that, certainly do speak to me.
Yes, doesn't Estonia have that at the moment?
So interestingly, the inspiration for that has come from one of our CTO actually visited Estonia and Finland, who are doing that. But I believe Estonia had a recent problem with a hack to that data, so they haven't got it completely right yet.
From St. Petersburg, there was an Estonia thing this
Yeah,
morning.
so no one's got it completely
Is it the
right.
Russians? Probably the Russians.
It was the Russians. Yeah, I think it's that.
Paying for everything.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do, if you don't mind, is transition over to the third speaker, who's not here with us. I think she's in London, but she's going to join us by Skype if we don't have any technical gremlins. So I'm going to actually, in fact, well, you've got another, I gave you 20 minutes, didn't I? Sure. So you've got another, 8 minutes, so go for it. Let's continue the conversation, because this is really impressive and very, very socially important in terms of social impact. So go for it, just like Q&A session while I kind of get this started.
Yeah, sorry, you go first.
So we are talking about the use cases, right? You can have the use cases in the pension industries as well over the blockchain. So you give the pension, right? You give a pension, so you give you invest in the policy. That company invests those money into the fund. So those funds need to be tracked, but this company keep the whole tracking of those things. So being a use case of blockchain is the person should know where the fund is going, where it is being.
Isn't the problem with that when you mix pension data with medical data, that somewhere down the line, data scientists will find a way of putting that together, and that could, in later years, end up being a DNR, end of life situation. Maybe you smoke too much or you drink too much, and you're not fit for certain expensive medical treatments. So I do have that kind of
I think
problem joining medical data
I'll just-
and pension data.
I'll just give you a heads up. I belong from India, and I've started with a startup back there on the healthcare system. And
Suna, are you good?
that time we were doing a couple of
Excellent.
things, like for example the healthcare, like being
Perfect
inseparable.
timing. Excellent. We're just going to
Yes.
look just now while we get you
where
set
you
up.
can,
So what I'm going to do
you
now,
can have your all wife,
you're on
your whole
screen.
pension, your whole
Is,
insurance will be dependent on
Not
that.
yet. I'm
Like
just
how
about
your
to
health
call
is,
you.
how much you are drinking, how much you are
I'm about to
doing
call you
Yeah.
now
Everything could
on
be based
yeah.
on
Okay.
the health condition, the sensors, the data that's being sent over. Going forward,
What about people like me? I'm screwed when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's on the phone.
that will cost you more.
Okay.
So your insurance
All right,
will
we
be
can
more
hear you. So I'm going to
based
hang up
time.
on you on the phone,
Monthly
and then we'll switch over to Skype,
installment will
okay?
be more.
Okay,
All right. Good sound, good
Right, can you hear
visuals.
us?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello, Edinburgh.
Yeah. Over to you. You're now live.
We're now live.
Yeah, it's a bit
Weird.
like the Eurovision Song Contest, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what they do.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But anyway,
Okay.
no, we're not singing. It's a bit odd because we can't see anybody. We're just
No,
looking
it's
at a
okay.
blank.
Thanks. No, don't worry about it. We'll get some kind of strange video feedback or something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
All right. So.
Well, I'll introduce myself. I'm not, you might have guessed, I'm not Paul Worrell. Paul's sitting here. He's got man flu and he's coughing incessantly. And he will cough on cue.
So I know every 3 or 4 words I will cough. So.
Yeah, I'm going to do the presentation. We're going to share screen in a moment so you can see our presentation.
I'll do it now.
And then Paul will interject at points while I'm doing the presentation. Okay, just about to.
I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, share screen.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So I think I've got about 15-20 minutes to just give you a brief overview of what we're doing with Zonafied, where we are, we call it a digital wallet for securing activities. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of examples and specifically our first use case, because Zonafied above all is a product that people can use. It is built on the Ethereum platform. It is a working dApp. We've had the dApp in MVP since last year, and we've been training registrars in England and Wales on it for our first use case. But before I go on to that, I would like to share with you some of the recognition we have had from the Ethereum community for what we've been doing with Zonafied. This is a diagram of the Web3 abstracted stack by Stefan Twal, who's one of the founders of Ethereum. Stefan invited us at Zonafied to present at the Ethereum London meetup in March of this year. And in May, he brought out this diagram and he showed Zonafied as one of the dApps that is built, that he feels worthy of recognition for, built on this stack. So for us, that recognition was great, especially because we're working sort of in the middle of England, in the Midlands, and we're not really connected with the wider Ethereum community. Okay, so the team, the Zonafied team, it has been mainly, well, exclusively myself and Paul who've been working on Zonafied for over 2 years now. I'm going to just pass it over to Paul to introduce himself.
I'll see if I can summarize myself without a cough. So I'm Paul Worrell. I've been working in software development and distributed computing since the mid-1980s. I actually started with as being an expert in Microsoft Unix. So some people, depending on the age, gasp and say, what? There's no such thing as Microsoft Unix. But if you're a little bit older, you do remember that there was actually a product called Microsoft Xenix before we had the terrible MS-DOS and Windows and everything. So I started in distributed computing then and spent most of my career in financial services through the 90s, building dealing room floors, things like that. Getting involved in software development, products like Smalltalk, one of the first object-oriented kind of languages that took off, and then Java, etc. I've also done a number of startups, and they all get to a certain stage, and then they either happen or they don't. So the one I had before this one ended in 2006, just before the crash, and so I ended up working for JP Chase. And for the whole time I was there, I was always looking for that other opportunity. And I found that in 2014 with this problem that we're trying to solve now. So I left JP Chase in April 2014, and we've been working on that ever since. So it's a long time, actually. It's 2.5 years,
yeah.
Isn't it? And the blockchain phenomena really came in a serendipitous kind of way early last year. In fact, Selena, who was at a lot of financial conferences, noticed the interest in that. So we got into Ethereum March last year, and we haven't really looked back.
Yeah.
That's given us a lot of momentum. So that's myself.
Yeah. So I'm Selina, I'm the co-founder. I had a career in teaching and I left that to join Zonified full-time in 2015 because I'd identified a use case with local governments where we felt Zonified would find its first application, and that's the use case that I've been working on for over 2 years, and I'm now focused on working with service providers to train and onboard them to accept live event activities. I'll give you a brief overview of a few of the other people in the team. We do have a few developers who want to work with us, but we can't actually name them because they are working for other organizations. So one that we've just mentioned there, he's actually working for Goldman Sachs at the moment. So obviously,
You probably shouldn't have even said that.
Oh well,
Got him in trouble.
Yeah,
They'll be seeking him out now.
yeah, and we're quite fortunate in we are sort of building out this team in preparation for a potential ICO. We're quite fortunate, and we've had 2 guys from Digix Global join us. Chris Hitchcott is actually a local guy near Birmingham, but he works in Singapore. He's been involved in Ethereum and with Digix for over 3 or 4 years now. He's been a supporter of Zonified for over a year, and he's now joined us as a contributor and advisor. Seeing as we are going for preparing for an ICO, we have somebody who's working solely on the concept, I think, Paul, of
the tokenomics. Yeah, so we picked a guy that Bernd Fleischmann. He's another peer of mine, 30 years in sort of financial services, but he has an interesting start in his career because he literally sat a few offices or seats away from Tim Berners-Lee back in 1991, 1992 in CERN. And he was, I would say he started working on one of the first big data problems, collecting data from the forerunner to the large Hadron Collider there. So, but anyway, he's had a whole career in financial engineering. We felt we needed someone to try with that kind of experience to apply it to what tokenomics meant to us as a team. So he's joined us to take that role. I'll just accelerate us through a little bit, shall I? So one of the problems we've got is key management. We already know that we can't manage our keys. I don't know whether anybody else has the same fear. So we've actually got a young guy that we've got completely focused on trying to understand how to manage keys, which is Sufyan Holland. We've got a guy called Dan Fu. His partner's actually big in the Steemit community. If people know Steemit, she's a major contributor there. So he's joined us for community management. And then Sean G, who's one of the co-founders of Digix, which is one of the first ICOs actually from a couple of years ago. He's a main advisor. And then we just want to add with this guy, Bennett Aaron. So Bennett Aaron, he's got a claim to be one of the first people that actually had true identity theft, classified as identity theft in the UK. And he did a Channel 4 documentary. You can search for it if you like. And in that, he actually stole the identity of the then Home Secretary, which was Charles Clarke. So he's an interesting character. Since then, he's a comedian and TV scriptwriter, but he's been supporting us for a good 18 months now because he believes that our product can help people avoid identity theft. So,
okay, yeah. So let me give you a quick introduction to what exactly is Zonified. Zonified is a digital wallet for securing activities, and just like you send messages and pictures, Zonified enables you to send someone, say an organization, an assurance that an activity, something important you're doing, is genuine. And our key differentiator is that we enable family, friends, and professionals to help in giving their assurance to those activities. And just by involving one extra person, it becomes significantly less likely that you become a victim of fraud. But most importantly, it just makes it much easier to verify all of your activities as legitimate. Zonified is a DApp using smart contracts in the Ethereum platform. It has been an MVP, like I said previously, since October 2016. It is you can download it from Google Play, or it's available on iOS in test flight. But and this is a, sorry, I'm just moving on quickly now. This is a version, this is what the app looks like. This is version 0.5. If you download it from Google Play or from iOS, you will need credit to use the app. And if you get in touch with us, we'll pass you some test credit to use on our test network. Well, we'll pass you test ETH. It's not the real thing. It's test ETH. If you look at the first view on the left, that's the home view, the activities view. It shows 3 different activities in various different states. And each activity is a smart contract. As you can see in the middle, there it's represented by a QR code with various attributes. I will stress that there is no data that is carried in that smart contract. The data is passed through other means, and the activity is very easy to share because our goal is to make it much easier for people to work together to secure activities. In Zonafied, there are 3 roles that people can play. The first is obviously you create an activity, something that you want to protect, and then you can acknowledge other people's activities. And there is a feature within the app to verify activities. For organizations wanting to accept and process and then verify these activities, we are building out enterprise tools. And this app is, like I said, downloadable from Google Play. No, but before we even built this app or we adopted blockchain technology, we were already working on a problem and looking for an area where there may be motivators for people to adopt our solution. And we found that, and that is what I've been working on with local government registrars in live events. And this is our first use case. We've been working on this for over 2 years now, and we now have letters of intent with a number of UK, well, across England and Wales, a number of register authorities who plan to acknowledge live events for the public. We've been training some of these register authorities since October of last year. So they are trained and they're actually just waiting for us to go live with Zonafied. We're going to start with marriages because that's a small population of people where we can start using the product, and then we would like to move on to other life events like death. Our focus now then is on training and working with service providers to accept these events. So at the moment, we are working with a number of major insurance companies, consultancies to accept these events and integrate them with their existing business processes. For the service providers, the motivator is it can increase the automation of some business processes. It enables them to engage in their customers' live events, and obviously they're hoping it will improve the customer experience. If I could just now give a little bit more detail to the 3 roles that I spoke about earlier that people play in Zonafied. These are it's the creator of an activity, an acknowledger and a verifier all around an activity. And an activity is something important, something that you're doing that it's important, you want to protect, and you want to make sure that it's only you who can carry that activity out. So in the first instance, the activity owner would create an activity and then ask people to acknowledge it. So it could be a mutual acknowledger, that's somebody that's pre-nominated and shared beforehand with the verifier, or it could be an authoritative acknowledger, that's somebody playing a professional role in certain activities like registrars in our first use case, or it could be a solicitor. Then that activity, the activity owner is able to very easily share that with the verifier because the blockchain is a universally accessible technology. The verifier can pick up the activity and then do a couple of checks. Has it come from their known customer or the person that they're expecting to? If it's an activity where they where a authoritative acknowledger is required, they can refer to what we call the authoritative acknowledger oracle to attest to the roles and authority of that authoritative acknowledger. So if I show you how this would work in our first use case, which is in life events, and we are beginning with marriages, so we're calling that activity a newlywed name change activity, because for newlyweds, the problem at the moment is if somebody gets married and then they want to change their name after getting married, they have to inform, say, 30 different organizations of the same name change, but do it 30 different times with various levels of having to provide documentation, etc. With Zonafied, the newlywed creates the name change activity, and after they're married, the registrar who officiates the process of marriage would, simply using our app, acknowledge that activity, and then the newlywed is able to share that very easily with all their different service providers. So for the newlywed, it becomes a one-click name change activity. They just choose from a list of different service providers that they want to share this activity with, and the service provider picks up the activity, can then check that it is a registrar from the authoritative registrar oracle, and then simply reverts to their existing business processes to process that activity and service the customer's needs. We have many different applications of Zonafied. In fact, we get many organizations or people coming to us saying, oh, well, I think I could use Zonafied for such and such. So some of the applications we are working on, but other applications people are coming to us for. The application can also, the Zonafied can also be used by organizations assuring customers that something that the organization is doing is valid, and it is a valid representative of that organization reaching out to the customer. I think we're all familiar with getting texts or emails or some form of communication from, say, a bank or some other organization, and then thinking, well, is it really them, or is this somebody else pretending to be that organization? So in this case, the service provider is actually the activity owner. So say this a support desk person at Barclays would raise the activity, and somebody within Barclays who would call an authoritative acknowledger would acknowledge that yes, the activity is valid for that customer, and then the support desk person can share that activity with the customer. So in this case, the customer becomes the verifier. And we've added a feature for, because we are working with some charities like Money and Mental Health to help vulnerable people. So in the case of vulnerable people or people with impaired judgment, they can pre-nominate a family member or a carer to be an acknowledger as well. And the support desk could share the activity with that person who also acknowledges it. So the customer has an added assurance that, yes, this is from Barclays, and yes, somebody else knows about it who can also attest to that being a valid activity. I am moving quite quickly on. If Paul,
keep going.
If you want to interject, just come in. I will mention that up till this time, we have been and we are self-funded. So we were approached by members of the crypto community in the middle of the year. We have looked at traditional VC funding, and we're now preparing for a token generation event. We've got a white paper out. We hope to create a token, we're calling a together token or a TOG, which users would be able to exchange for services between each other. And we've engaged the London law firm, CMS Nabarro Olswang, to provide legal counsel. and the funds we're raising, we hope to use to take the product live and go operational with the UK local government use case. Don't know, do you want to step in any?
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah, these are just some
else to add. I think the point I was going to make is that we did develop the product. People have been using it. We've trained people in the public services on using the product. They've been simulating the use of the product in those services. In those services. And we're now directly talking to, as you've said, a number of organisations that are looking for that first opportunity to get on the rung of using blockchain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been fortunate that blockchain and Ethereum has enabled us to take, as a small startup, we're now able to talk to the local government and companies and get in there at quite a senior level to explore what this technology is about. And because this is real, and we started with the problem first and then came across blockchain and Ethereum, we're hoping that it's been a long time, 2.5 years, but we're hoping to get significant acceleration in the first quarter next year with actually trying to go live with some of this stuff. And I think everybody there would be saying, wow, is Ethereum really ready? And it is a question that we might not use the public Ethereum, we might use a consortium Ethereum,
should we come off the share screen?
etc. So we've got a lot of questions ourselves about the technology. I've noticed the previous two speakers, and Simon saying there's a lot of questions. We have exactly the same questions, but we actually have people that really want to use the product now and use it for the public.
Yeah, we're going to stop sharing screen, so if anybody has any questions. Yeah, we can.
Is for James and Matthew to go to the front over there, because what we're going to do is an open Q&A panel session style, so you guys can talk, you can ask all the speakers various questions, but I, if I may, would love to start obviously with your proposed ICO, and I can see the attraction of an ICO, and if I were to put forward a sort of the moral argument to say this is an ICO that has the moral high ground to actually take place, for the following reasons. Firstly, you are not a solution looking for a problem. You are tackling a problem that blockchain solves, because so many of these ICOs are blockchainifying things that don't need to be blockchainified. They're just doing it as a sort of a pretense to just jump on the gravy train, right? And as a result, all these chances are giving the entire ICO phenomenon a bad name, and it frustrates me because it's muddying the waters for true innovators like yourself. Now, my question is this. If I were to do an ICO versus the traditional VC stroke angel funding route, what would keep me awake at night is this issue of compliance to do with the token sale, is it a utility or is it an equity? Is it a security? What have you done to remove that issue that you may find within the next 7 years? Because I believe HMRC can retrospectively fine you or shut you down if they turn, if regulations say, sorry, you've got to now return all the funds in the same way that China did, because it's not a true utility token. It's effectively equity, which is
okay. So as I said, I spent sort of 25-30 years in financial services, and I think anybody who comes from that background as a technologist found the whole industry really interesting, because learning about all the financial products, different types of securities, swaps and derivatives and bonds, and God forbid CDOs and everything. So I had that immediately when I saw what was happening. I went, but this is a security, and almost everything that I see is somebody starting some kind of new loan thing or something just generally looks like an equity, right? So I was very concerned about that. So that, hence the first step we took is we interviewed 5 law firms. I mean, we literally grilled 5 law firms face to face, challenging them on, do they understand this concept? Do they understand financial service modeling and whatever? And from that, CMS law were the number one. So we've been working with them for 2 months now. Our token is literally something that people will exchange between themselves. Okay, so it becomes when you use the app, the credit will be our token. And then you will be using, somebody who's a professional acknowledger will be saying, I want this many tokens, okay, to perform this service. Or you might reward a mutual acknowledger to incentivize them to acknowledge pretty quickly, otherwise you're waiting a couple of days. Yeah. So you might invite 3 people to be a mutual acknowledger and say, here's some tokens to encourage you to be the first back to acknowledge this thing that I want to do. Yeah. But basically the token is always exchanged between the people that have some kind of value that they're and service that they're providing each other. That means it is a utility token. And the law firm has come back and said in the UK, it is clearly a utility token, and we have no issue, particularly in the UK or Singapore and I believe Hong Kong. We can't obviously say that every jurisdiction, particularly the States and China, is we don't have to. I mean, I'm saying this from a meeting I had this morning, but we've discussed KYC and compliance this morning. And as far as UK's law is concerned, with this token, our lawyers categorically said that we do not need to do KYC and compliance. So all of this stuff that's going around, I believe, is that a lot of people involved in this new cryptocurrency are thinking, let's replicate a lot of the services that exist in the old world of crypto, of finance, or the people that platform providers or underwriters. So they're realizing, oh, here, with all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, there's an opportunity now to be billing all these young companies that want to ICO. Let's start billing them, and I just see that as very unhealthy. Although it is a concern that, particularly in the States, that they might go back retrospectively and classify us as having a product that's, you know, illegal. But I don't. Our lawyer has told us we're okay. So on that basis, we will proceed.
People do have to just click for the terms and conditions, though.
Well, with that, even the concept of clicking to say I accept the terms and conditions, even that, we've been discussing that, because when you actually send a transaction to the ERC20 token, our terms and conditions obviously say by doing so you accept the terms and conditions, right? So we just need to we need a way of making sure people have read the terms and conditions, but we don't know whether we need a click yet to say they have read them, because to do that means we need to maintain a record of who they are. And then we suddenly fall into this problem of storing people's data, which is what we don't want to do. We're sort of a concern,
is it, or is that something separate?
Well, as soon as we start storing people's information, it's almost like we're breaking our principles, because we believe information and the fact that it's replicated and stored everywhere is why we have this problem that we're trying to solve.
Okay. Interesting question, Johnny. What's that?
Can I make a comment there?
Yeah, and then we'll go to Johnny.
You take people's names and addresses and details for your token. It has the nature of a security, and you may want to check that. When I looked at what I was doing, it was very similar to what you're doing. I spoke with the FCA. They are very, very helpful. And they did say the moment you take people's names and addresses and so on.
So it's within anyone's interest not to go through the KYC. It's kind of ignorance is bliss. I think it is interesting. I wrote a blog profile about this. A little bit like the sort of implicit understanding is, yeah, I'm obviously, I'm not in it for the charity. I'm buying this token because I feel that it is linked to the long-term value of the company. But of course, because I'm signing the T's and C's to say I have no rights or there's no upside, financial upside. It's kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a paradox.
Yeah, Simon, can I just interject there? It is a new thing because what we're doing is creating software that will be freely available, right? That will enable people to get some value and create an ecosystem value, but then they will exchange this token between themselves, right? So there isn't a direct relationship between the value of any entity, like a company. We're literally, if you really started to think about open source software, what did open source software do? We put some code out there. We put this liability statement that said, you know, on all open source software, MIT license or Apache, it all has this clear statement saying, you know, we don't warrant any liability or whatever those words are. So we were thinking of the token itself. Yes, we raise money to do that, but the actual token itself, it becomes part of this ecosystem that we don't control. And in a way, people could fork the software and everything and create a new community using that uses a different token. Okay, so
it's still sort of traded as if you had an IPO. You know, they're available to trade freely on the open market in the same way that an IPO is, right? So the similarities are spookily accurate. But I think I'm just fascinated. You know, I'm kind of challenging a little bit because I'm really keen to have more clarity, as is the rest of the industry. And so, you know, this is a conversation that needs to be had, and I wish we could have rather than guesswork, because no one really knows. It just seems to be purely subjective. But can we move the conversation on a little bit? And I just want to open it up to the room real quick. Johnny, question.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you're saying. I love what you guys are doing and that you're trying to redefine a new model. But I'm kind of curious, what is that business model? How are you guys planning on sustaining using an ICO? What you get into?
Well, the hope is the token that has utility will miraculously be traded, and therefore the tokens will miraculously increase in value, and voila, presumably.
Not for us, no, Simon.
No?
That's a really.
So what's the business model?
Sorry, let me tell you. That's a really good question. Was it John? Was it John? That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. Okay, so look, as somebody that's invested a lot of money in building this business. Normally, of course, we own the software, we get the customers, we start taking fiat revenue, and that starts to show that we've got value in our company, and then that's reflected in equity value in the company. So even I, as an entrepreneur, technology entrepreneur that's put money into this business, I look at the ICO and say, I'm throwing away all my future revenue. There's no revenue that comes to us at all once we provide that token and people start exchanging it between themselves. There isn't any revenue. So where is our business model? Our business model is that we're developing the actual wallet will be freely available and people can use and exchange the token, but we're developing the software for the oracles to then, which will be subscription-based oracles to the corporate verifiers. So when a corporation wants to receive an activity, there's certain information they want verified. Okay, so we're building up software solutions that will be sold by our company that are enterprise specific. It helps them integrate with Salesforce.com and other products, but the actual ecosystem around the token is completely independent, and of course the interests of all the people involved have to be aligned, and our interests are that the public start to use this product, are confident, and demand from corporates to accept the activities because it makes it safer for them, and then the corporations come to us needing more corporate orientated software.
You control the ecosystem, I understand. Absolutely. Well, that's great. Yeah. You know, you're not a charity, you're not a non-profit. You've got a business model like any other corporate enterprise, and as a result it's within your interest to increase the value of not necessarily your token. You want the utility of the token and the widest circulation as possible, but ultimately it's the stock in your company. You will sell shares in your company like a traditional venture would, right? Aside from the token, that's what you want to see, where you want to see value created. And so your incorporated company, whatever it is, may end up IPOing and or being acquired, and that's where you get your exit. Understood. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, cool. So we've got a question real quick. Go, Michael. Yeah.
It's a really interesting model. It's a platform model, a two-sided market model. where basically for the user to have value, you need corporates to have value, you need users. How are you planning to deal with that difficult problem?
Like a chicken and egg when you're trying to build a app, absolutely. Yeah. If you build it, they will come.
Simon, can you repeat that question for me?
It was. It's a little bit like any platform play. It's a chicken and egg situation, like eBay. When you're starting out with eBay, you need a critical mass of product to attract the buyers, but you're not going to attract buyers without the product and the sellers and the marketplace. And so what I think that the question is, how do you get around that chicken and egg when building your ecosystem?
Yeah, it's another absolutely perfect, really good question. And of course, that's why we started trying to root out that very first little place where there was value. So
really laser focused.
Really laser focused. I mean, imagine that we're building a system for a newlywed name change. So when we were in Mexico and I spoke to some of the US sort of VC type companies that were hanging around, they just laughed me off the planet. We're interested in a Star Trek solution, not newlywed name change. But the point is that by getting that one small service, which is valuable for the newlywed, valuable for the registrar because they take a payment. They take payments for this, right? Just like they would selling you a wedding certificate. And then the service providers we're speaking to, they all want to get involved in getting these death notices because it is a big problem. And there's also regulation that's been hanging around for a couple of years on companies having to improve how much empathy they have for people representing the bereaved. Okay, so
a pain point and it's not particularly glamorous or exciting or Star Trek-y, but it is a mundane problem that many millions of potential service users can relate to, and as a result it's extremely meaningful. It may not be kind of sexy in the same, in the way that you said, but necessarily very important to society, and you seem to be going about it in a very smart way, and all power to you. But what I want to do, if I may, because we're really short for time, is pivot perhaps over to the other speakers briefly for the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, and then I think we'll sort of shut it down there and we'll transition back over to the lobby and continue.
One very quick one.
No, go for it. Absolutely.
Technical question. I think it's great what you do, and both type of approaches in general are very interesting. You seem to be very far along, but one of the usual suspects with Oracle setups is what happens when you need a reversal. So let's say someone comes into the registrar, they're hangover, and apparently tomorrow morning I'm married and I'm dead. So that would be a problem because, well, it's cryptographically signed, it's on the blockchain, so definitely has to be true, right? And definitely dead and married at the same time. So the question is...
Technically you would be, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And that is reversible.
It's
reversible. You can't get divorced when you're dead, and you can't...
Definitely married.
Unless you're...
Yeah. So
the
question is...
history revives.
Because I discussed that in the past, and there's no good solutions in terms of the technical. So I was wondering, have you approached this problem, and how would you solve it on your platform?
What's the problem?
I'm not sure I understood the question, sorry.
Was it somebody getting married and...
You put everything through a ledger on Ethereum or somewhere else, on some sort of a distributed ledger. So whenever a transaction is confirmed, that's then put onto the chain. So the fact that I am dead is on the chain. So let's say it's publicly accessible, so then insurance companies have access to this information. So if I am dead, that can lead to not only personal problems, legal problems, financial problems, all sorts of health.
I got it. So I think Selena said we don't store any information on the blockchain at all. So all the smart contract is a record of the public addresses that were involved in the activity, and there's literally just a hash that resolves obviously to some fact.
And someone died.
Yeah.
So if no one can look at the blockchain and see that it did represent someone who died.
So only the stakeholders who have a business to know that will be informed. That's the whole kind of point, really, in a way. And that's the breakthrough. That's the beauty of it.
How are you authenticating users would that vary between services as you change like suppliers from marriages and deaths to other industries like NHS? I don't know. What's the process of verifying people or who they say they are?
Oh, okay. So that's where we get into a great topic, which is identity. So we actually say that we're not in identity as a product. So you've got other people like Pillar and Civic, etc., that fall under the identity umbrella. We do as well, but we say we don't fit into identity. So if you take the use case of the registrars themselves, when they do that marriage, it is the most intensive identity check in the country. It's really, really diligent. It's literally microscopic, okay, when you get married. So when someone's gone through that marriage process and they're given the acknowledgement, so they've got their activity as a newlywed and they present it to the registrar, the fact the registrar's signature is on there attests to the fact that and of course the newlywed is presenting, I'm going to change my name from Mrs. Smith to Miss Smith to Mrs. Jones, right? So all the registrar's doing is signing that. So as an authoritative acknowledger oracle for verifiers, verifying newlywed name change notices, they know that that signature would not be on there if that marriage had not happened. So we're not really into proving who they are, but proving that the circumstances are genuine, and there are roles and authorities that are attesting to the fact the circumstance is true.
I think that's where Polkadot is trying to kind of operate, where we won't have one blockchain to rule them all. We'll have gazillions of little blockchains and big blockchains and private and public that will all eventually interlink via some kind of bridge or API, and that's what Polkadot's trying to achieve. So yes, there would be an external, which brings you into the conversation, James, where it would reach out to prove the identity, then go back to the original blockchain event once the identity has been authenticated by a different blockchain, right? Yeah.
I've got three things just of what I've heard. It's like, so I argue we're in the attention economy today, off to pivot into intention economy. And guess what? That is the Star Trek economy. So intention. I think it's the word they use in the.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
Well, it's off to happen. It's in your intention. Your attention is right now. It's on this glass, but I intend to walk through the door, and that's more valuable than the attention. Anyway, that is the Star Trek economy, and I think this app is one of the leaders on that. The second one was to do the ICO.
I love that intention economy.
Is it attention though?
Is it attention or intention economy?
We live in the attention economy today, like eyeballs, Google, Web 2.0, but we're progressing into an intention.
Yes.
Like precogs, like Minority Report.
Vitalik's been talking about this concept because it helps the scalability. You only need, if the intention goes truthful and both parties are happy, you're happy. When it goes wrong, you go back to the verification of the blockchain.
Gotcha.
I see.
Okay.
That's why I think they're excited about this particular application. Matthew mentioned the Ocean Protocol. So I was at a talk by Bruce a couple of weeks ago in Berlin. They're gearing up to do some event, they say in the new year. They're putting, I think, 15-20% of their ICO into a tax liability fund, just in case. So they're being open that in their draft.
Okay, thanks.
So maybe you have to do so. And the third one is probably a slight question. So you mentioned the Oracle. It was the second half of my talk, but they're two big topics. But so all these layers stack up, and when Matthew was doing your example, it came to the AI, right? And said we've now got this distributed sampling. But guess what? Most of the value is in the gradient, the training model. And so the difference between federated machine learning, even the one I would argue, and decentralized is that everyone that contributed to the gradient should actually own the AI too. Because guess what? That's going to be used and deployed, and that's where all the money is. So again, you'll be buying it on the cheap, even though it's decentralized. And so I think the role for the community is to create these oracles, I call them blind oracles, which are owned by the community, governed by the community, And that gives democracy across from the smart contract to the computation to the data and ultimately to what really wants the intention that the end users both want to happen. Sorry.
Okay, let's do maybe one more question. I think. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Data lab.
Ali.
Am I right in saying anybody associated with the data lab? The data lab doesn't take IPR, that you work with people and that's it.
Yeah,
For partner developments and so on.
So we do various things. We do collaborative innovation projects where if you're a company or an organisation and you want to work with someone in academia or fund the academic. And we also have our own internal data science team, of which I'm part of, and we can give you data science time for an in-kind or small cash contribution. And then we do a lot of skills and training in data science, funding masters and PhDs, and a lot of community as well.
Sounds good. Okay, I think Ali, go for it.
You know, it's this whole thing with the sort of personal data, and I've got this data, so I guess the NHS is an example. That's still stored somewhere like centralised. My data, the NHS have got it. And how can I sort of do stuff like I say, well, I want these people to read my data, and then I might say, well, I don't want to read my data anymore. How can I take that back? How can, like, my data's got to be somewhere stored. It's not on my personal computer. I need to give it into something.
It's like little doors that are temporarily open.
How can I, like, say, use my data, but I only want these people to read it, and then I say, you know what, now you can't read it anymore. Like, the minute they've got it, it's now in a sort of, you know, centralised database. How can I be sure? Yeah.
Wait safe.
Aye. Well, that's my question. Is like they all talk about, oh, we don't want to store the personal data, but it's got to go somewhere to then. You talk about these kind of
It'll
hazards.
be on storage. You'll see it. It'll be a distributed blockchain-based storage solution that only you have access to through the private key. No one else.
But then my private key will be lost, so I'll probably start using centralized.
That's a different question
That's
entirely.
as well.
Because we all know that person who's constantly losing their phone, their house keys, and their bank account they transfer. They're going to really struggle in the blockchain world. You're quite right, and we all know that person. So, and that's an adoption challenge for the average consumer, because they do silly things and they do lose their private key.
But I argue that you can only solve that problem by bringing the computations to the data. By definition, as soon as you allow someone access to it.
Yeah.
But if you sandbox your own computer environment, you can have that computer environment on third-party hardware, but it's like you own it still. And that's the only way. And then it comes to how you want to share the answer. Do you want to share it blind and zero knowledge proofs and all that? Because you can only do comparative genomics by more than 2 people. So I think, yeah, but I think the generation, you know, so there is like an education going on. But guess what? You can reproduce your genome, right? So there's not like you lose your coins in terms of biomedical data. You can reproduce yourself.
Yeah, ZK Snarks, that's the future. Okay, and they're going to build that into a future version of Ethereum, aren't they?
Can anyone explain what a gradient is, really quickly? Does that bit went over my head?
Guys, okay, real quick, so we need to wrap things up, just really quick. I think, I'll tell you what, before we get into that conversation, we will say, sorry, are you okay to wrap things up?
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you both very, very much for taking the time to join us. It's been a genuinely fascinating talk for me personally, and I know from the level of interest and questions from the audience and the level of engagement that you know, we've all benefited a great deal from what you're doing. So thank you so much, and I think a round of applause. Thank you. I hope you can get it. I'll just pivot round, hopefully, before.
Oh.
I lost the connection. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye, bye, 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 bye. We did it. Sorry, carry on. What is a gradient? What was the question?
What is a gradient?
Gradient, yes.
If you have a model, most models are parametric. So that means you've got your model depends on a vector of parameters. Does that make sense? And then really you're trying to fit that model to some data.
and you want to update those parameters, and your gradient is the direction that you move in to improve your parameters.
You give us a
so
practical example
that's
of
kind
something
of
really
without,
super simple.
without doing the maths. Okay, really simple. You've got a hill, and literally you're driving a car up a hill. The gradient is the steepness of the hill. It's the direction you're going in to move up the hill. So in these algorithms, when you're trying to learn parameters, you're trying to optimize an objective function. You're trying to get up a hill, and the gradient is the direction you should move in terms of updating those parameters to optimize the objective.
The other way to say is you're going downhill, right? But guess what? There's 3 valleys, right? So if you were just in that sample set, you get the first value, you think that's the minimum, right? That's the cost you want to minimize. Actually, if you went over 2, there was 1 down there. Now, if you've got a distributed network, you're more likely to stumble upon that there might be that other place. That's the exciting thing, because your data set would be limited. So they've just used that term as the...
Very simply, just move one step closer to the solution. That's the simplest way to...
The wider your sampling space, the more certain that you might not just get locked in that. You're in valley 1, you think it's the lowest point, but actually if you went 3 valleys below, you get back to sea level.
So it's only a fraction of the truth, in a sense. You think it's the truth, the universe, kind of completeness, and then you extend your boundaries and realize
You've got a wide sample now.
we're missing so much data. We've arrived at incorrect assumptions.
Just in the local.
Right.
Do you have any resources that Data Lab you could share to start learning the maths behind this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we
That
can
would be
fund
really
you to
cool.
the data science master's course if you want.
Sweet. Let's do it. How many people are
And we do master classes quite regularly where people come in and talk about quite high level overviews of the latest machine learning tools.
You're located just by the ubiquitous chip, aren't you? In a very beautiful
Yeah,
building.
so in Glasgow, so we've got
In Glasgow, yeah.
But we've also got an office. The main office is actually in Edinburgh. Just
I see.
next to Brew Lab near the university.
Okay.
Through that, let's all navigate one coffee shop.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. All right, on that note, I think we'll wrap up. Round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah. You think I usually real life presence gets probably.
I just say thank you to our sponsors, by the way, and our host, PLA Piper. I forgot to say that. They've been very generous giving us the space. So, a round of applause. And everything. So without them, it would not genuinely be possible, because my place is far too small to have you guys around.
Right.